Joan from Openfort. We're starting like a short squeeze combo of conversations with different companies building on the open source space. And I thought like it was a very good opportunity to start talking with the team that builds and maintains the eRPC repo. One like a project that we stopped by at Openfort, started integrated, and has helped us substantially on how we manage RPC calls, how we do a load balancing, etc. So I let first introduce Kasra here, member of like the eRPC as well.
Thank you so much, Joan. Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this. Yeah, my name is Kasra. I'm one of the co-founders and like initial builders of eRPC. And initially, we kind of didn't plan it to become open source. It was just the pain that we had when we were working with like crypto data, especially like RPC layer, that there was a lot of inconsistency between different providers. There was data quality issues. There was redundancy issues. And we had it in multiple products that we were building. And we built a kind of a really bad version of it ourselves, like you hack something together and it kind of solves a problem. But initially, we kind of talked to more people, realized that, okay, yeah, the pen is kind of bigger, and then you kind of need to do quality. So that's basically how we started. But yeah, happy to dive into the story and how we kind of grew it from there.
Yeah, I think like the first question that comes to mind here, it's literally like every good, open source, public good piece of software. How are you thinking like 6 months to like 3 years time, and like how this software, like how you manage to keep a very clean piece of software maintained, and how you manage obviously to pay people to maintain it and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like everything starts basically by recognizing like a big problem or urgent problem, because if you kind of if the pen is not big, a lot of people can kind of do something by themselves. So it's not like you're not going to get the initial momentum. And for eRPC, we were lucky that, as I mentioned, like the problem was there. And one thing we realized was a lot of teams, and we were talking to them, they were just building a hacky version of this product themselves internally. So basically, we got that feedback, and then we like scoped out like this product can have like multiple components. You need to have like a failover mechanism. You need to have maybe a caching mechanism. But if you're not careful at that stage, you can just grow the features a lot, and then you're not able to deliver on the initial quality, which is really, really important. Because, for example, as you know, like eRPC is focused on EVM, let's say, change. We didn't expand it to Solar, we didn't expand to other architecture because it doesn't allow us to like focus only on one thing and make it useful. Like caching, the option of doing like multiple drivers and those things, we only focus on memory-based caching. On failover, there was a lot of things we could have done, but we only like focus on, let's say, multiple things. So I would say like the focus is really, really important as in the first 6 months. You want to narrow it down like to like a set of features, maybe 2 or 3 components that is actually going to solve like a big pain for your customers or let's say projects, and then deliver like the highest quality possible. And by that, I mean, like highly tested, good documentation goes a long way, especially in those things. Make it just easier for them to get onboarded and all those things. And just like religiously try to send it and pitch it to as many potential people that can basically benefit from this. I would say that's the first 6 months. That's all you have to focus on.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. I figured, how did you think about now that you finish on like the segue of distribution here? How did you think about distributing it? How did you think about rallying the people that would mostly start like implementing the next day that your documentation was out? What kind of like things came to mind there?
Yeah, I think crypto probably is a bit different than other industries. So because let's say if you're building something in the cloud or let's say like more mature development, even AI, I would say your target audience is like a lot more compared to let's say crypto. So maybe the strategy I'm talking about here would be like different, but let's just stick with the crypto audience for now. We kind of chose a strategy of knocking on people's door. So we kind of didn't like write some blog posts and hope that people would come. So we basically identify like the type of people that this particular tool will be useful for them. And it's usually, let's say, the backend engineers or DevOps people in like crypto teams. You can find them on GitHub. You can, in the most nicest and kind of non-scammy way, kind of approach them and say like, hey, I have built this tool. I think this could be useful for you guys. And maybe you can just give it a shot. And then when you get like your first like 10 or 20 people, if they love what you have built, they're gonna tell people about it. Like I think the first 10 people that we attracted, they're still like with us. They even when we want to launch, let's say like some premium features, they're open to that because they were with us from the, let's say, day one. And they told more and more people kind of. So that's kind of the best approach that we realized for our own product. It could be different for, let's say, other categories, but that's what works best for us in that sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think is like something? Because I was thinking you made like a good distinction between, crypto, open source, and like open source in general. What do you think is like maybe the first question here? Have you ever done like anything else open source, like maybe like not in the crypto space specifically or blockchain space?
Yeah, my co-founder actually he built like what was it like AWS saving cost tool. So it's great. A lot of audience, a lot of people work with AWS. And the kind of the strategy that worked for him was, just build this tool and then you publish it on Hacker News and like he was like one of the Amazon engineers now found it and promoted it. So you just get a lot of that's what the strategy. Maybe still like in crypto, this could make sense as well.
Yeah.
But I would suggest like trying multiple strategies and mostly be like hands-on yourself to get like the first $100.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's something you think open source projects, like just to keep it narrow as well, in the crypto space could learn from traditional open source projects in like the Web2 space? Because I'm seeing like a lot of, you're probably seeing as well, like a lot of, early startups going and like, launching with the narrative of like, we are the open source version of XYZ. Right. And like for some people it makes sense and like they want to, instantly contribute, etc. Like, do you believe that this is like an interesting narrative as well for crypto? Or like, is there anything else that we can learn from, more like traditional open source projects?
Yeah. We kind of use even a lot of Web2 kind of open source projects internally for a lot of different cases. Right? I would say the ones that stick out with you like the most for the longest is, but it's in two categories. So the first one is, the main value proposition, what you're actually trying to solve. So if you kind of solve a problem that is like really narrow, it's really specific, but it's not basically not cover all of my needs, then I might not use your open source tool because it's not complete in a sense, basically. Or for example, if you just open source a part of it, but for example, kind of try to make like the other parts premium prematurely, that's also probably not going to work perfectly because, like you cannot just give me like a half-baked product, it needs to be kind of complete. But you can basically be smart and say like solve the whole problem. But if you want to scale it, for example, then you will pay for like premium features. So that's like something that I think some Web2 projects just get, correct really, really well. So that's something we have to learn from them.
Interesting.
And the second one is, like, I mean, it's boring stuff, but you need to have like super good like documentation and, like test. And even the structure of your repo needs to make sense. And I would say also it's a bit harder to get like open source crypto projects. Like, let me try for like in under like 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, depending on, let's say, the use case, it is like more DevOps, maybe 1 hour, under 1 hour. It is like a wallet thing, maybe under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's just getting started making like, I think Rest is just the best one. They have really good documentation on those things. So just make it easy for me basically to get a bit of a taste before committing myself to the product.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds to me like the classic moment that a lot of founders would categorize in like the consumer industry, probably, right? Makes a ton of sense. Like the minute to aha needs to be as low as possible. And you mentioned, projects, trying to figure out their monetization, their pricing, like their business model. How are you thinking about this for open source projects and, more specifically for eRPC as well?
Yeah, that's one of the toughest kind of, questions. And in my opinion, you need to ask yourself this question from day one, even if you don't plan on doing it, because you might kind of lay the foundation in the wrong way, basically. So like the most basic one is just you kind of give everything for free, and then you kind of monetize it, let's say in like DevOps or cloud way. So, you can do it yourself, but we can kind of host it for you. I think that strategy makes sense if you can add like more, let's say, useful features besides only like hosting it. So for example, you can add like features that, because it comes from your knowledge of basically hosting it in, let's say, different environments. So for example, you're able to give like super detailed analytics on top of, your hosted version or something like that.
Right.
It take them like 6 months basically to maintain. Or it has to be like such a pain that maintaining it is gonna, be really, really hard. And then basically you're gonna solve that problem. So I would say maybe that's like the most basic strategy. But again, the mistake of just putting out some of the critical features out and charging for them, if it kind of makes the product incomplete, I think it's a really, like the people who know what they're talking about, they understand this and they're going to stay away from your project. So I would say maybe not that necessarily.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Maybe moving me to like, I'm very curious as well, because you guys been around with like this project for some months already. And so there's definitely like the hype moment where you launch it, probably like get the most attention, and then you have like the continuously launching process of things and like announcing, etc. So how do you approach like the operations, like the day to day of like maintaining, thinking about like features, requests from the community, etc.? Is it something that you decide to allocate it in like a month to month basis, like, okay, we will launch like 2 new features, we will fix 5 bugs, or like, is there like any sort of policy there? Like, for instance, one of the things that I was reading about, probably like not the first founder that wrote about this, it's like like the CEO of Linear, he was saying that internally they had like this policy of bug free, like anything that it's a bug, it's a priority on top of anything else. And so are you thinking in a similar fashion, or do you have like another like structure that works great for you?
Well, that's a really good question. So I would say, again, initially when you start, and also later, probably your focus is going to be, I don't know, 90% on the open source and maybe 10% on other things. And then at some point in future, you're going to mostly, let's say, okay, I'm going to focus like, I don't know, 60% on premium features and 40% because the product is more mature. But until you get to that maturity level, I would say anything that is like P0, as you mentioned, like, for example, we had like initially in the first 6 months, we had some customers say, okay, it works, this product works great until 1K RPS, but when you push it above 1K RPS, it's just gonna, behave differently. So that's like, like big fire, like put everything down and kind of fix that problem, because, scalability issues are what makes this product kind of, really important. So whatever is like scalability issues or core feature issues or all those things becomes like priority number 1, and then becomes like second layer of problem, which is, okay, how about this nice kind of feature? Okay, if there's enough consensus among community members, let's just focus on that. And there's like a set of features that are like vitamins, they're nice to have. It's just like 1 out of 100 people kind of want that feature. So I would say maybe stay away from them, because your time and attention is much better spent on, moving the needle, especially in the early days. So just focus on those features rather, making only 1 out of, let's say, 1,000 customers happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my last question here for you: what's next for eRPC? Where like, what's the roadmap looking like for, say, 6 months, a year?
Oh yeah, I think we have enough roadmap for the next 10 years, so that like, but yeah, just we focus on basically, the core failover and data integrity checks in eRPC. Basically, you want eRPC to work in any hostile environment. So we still have a lot of, edge cases to cover, and we're really lucky that, customers come and they create these issues, and, it's also really important to be responsive to them, just let them know that, hey, you're looking into it, it's part of your roadmap, so they don't feel like, it's an abandoned project. So you get like more of those feedbacks basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just trying to solve some of these problems and hopefully, let's say, launch a good premium feature on top of eRPC.
Great. Okay, that sounds great. I don't have any more questions, but we can do like lightning round of like 3 questions, like quick questions that I have for you, not unrelated to RPC, but like more open source space. If you're down. So
Cool.
what's one an unpopular open source opinion that you'll have or that you'll defend?
Unpopular. Oh, that's a good one. Trust your gut feeling as much as the feedback from community. Just only don't listen to community because sometimes you kind of started these things. So I would say trust your own gut feeling, maybe a bit more than only the community feedback, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great. Favorite small utility library you rely on?
Oh, that's a good one. Let me think. Oh, VM. And it's not small, but it's such a good tool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Okay. Open source library that you would like more people to know about?
People should read more about Ref, the way they're organizing their Telegram, the documentation, the structure they have about releases. It's just a kind of some of the best practices of crypto open source is there. So I would recommend people to check that out.
Okay. And the last one, a tricky one. What would you remove from the project if you could with no fallouts?
Oh, you mean in eRPC?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. We initially had one of the things I mentioned was you don't need to listen to everybody. We had some people kind of asking for what was the feature, like batching feature. Okay, we kind of did it, but we now regret it because batching is not like a best practice, and we didn't do our research enough basically to.
Okay. What's patching for anyone that doesn't know?
Yeah. Batching is for example, you want to take a bunch of requests and kind of send them as one, but it's not actually like as one request that you send to the upstream provider. So you still like send all the requests to the provider. So you're not saving anything on the cost, but it makes like debugging really hard. You don't understand which request went to which. So long story short, we should have done more research on it before implementing it.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. That's all for this quick interview. Appreciate the time, Kasra. See you around on the eRPC repo collaborating there.
You see.
Thank you.